The government here has said it's examining whether or not to follow in the footsteps of the Australian authorities and ban access by children and young people to social media platforms. Australia will become the first country in the world to introduce such a measure next week, when under-16s will be blocked from using the likes of Instagram, YouTube and TikTok.
It's the first country to make such a move, and now it's coming into action, as Meta, who own Instagram and Facebook, have started to remove those under 16 from its platforms in Australia. TikTok and YouTube are also required to do it before December the 10th. Or they could face fines in the tens of millions.
There are these powerful, harmful, deceptive design features that even adults are powerless to fight against, like autoplay and endless scroll and snap streaks. So what chance do our children have?
It's an idea that's won many parents over. But what about those it affects directly?
It's going to be worse for queer people and people with niche interests, I guess, because that's the only way they can find their community.
Governments around the world will be taking notes, including here in Ireland.
As a parent and as somebody who is very concerned, not just in relation to what we're being told in the media, but as well as that, what our schools are telling us and what our children are telling us themselves as well, and the appropriateness of some of the amount of time that they're spending online together with some of the material that they're seeing.
Separately today, Ireland's media regulator, Comisiún na Meán, said it signed a memorandum of understanding with the Australian E-Safety Commissioner. It affirmed the intention of both organisations to collaborate when it comes to online safety. The agreement will see them both share information on regulatory framework as well as best practices. The Irish government says it will use its EU presidency next year to push issues related to young people and online safety, while a memorandum looking at further rules around age verification on platforms will also be brought forward before Christmas. Gavin O'Callaghan, RTE News.
Now, staying with that story of Australia's social media ban and whether it'll work here or not, we're joined in studio by Alex Cooney, CEO of online safety charity CyberSafe Kids. Alex, the world will be watching Australia to see how it's going to work. Do you think it will work, and could we see something similar here?
First of all, I would applaud Australia for taking a lead. We're all talking about it. This is a global issue. They are the first ones to take decisive action, and that is coming into effect next week. So it is really interesting to see what they're doing. Whether it is a comprehensive enough approach and whether it really brings about the change that we need is another thing. I think Ireland has said that it will consider doing something similar, but it wants to do so in line with Europe. So we have to consider the European framework that we already have in place and see what would work in that context.
Just in terms of that, and Ireland's stance of doing it at an EU level, is there a danger that at that EU table, Ireland's voice might be very, very quiet, considering TikTok, YouTube, Meta, all of their headquarters here, and they pay the government billions in taxes? Is there a danger that maybe we won't be as vocal as some of our neighbours when it comes to a ban?
Yeah, I think there are concerns that we're a little bit afraid to spook the horses, but this is a European-wide concern, and a number of countries have indicated that they also want to take action on this. So I feel that, that swell of public opinion is starting to make a difference. The big question, though, is whether or not it will bring about the reform within those online environments that we really need to see, because it's no good just freezing these services. Instagram talked about freezing the account until the day they turn 16, so they're just thrown straight back into the same kind of environment, on their 16th birthday. We need to see real change and really age-appropriate spaces that children can engage in.
Now, the Australian legislation talks about platforms having to take reasonable steps to comply. It acknowledges that, yes, children lie about their age when they go online. Is there an acknowledgement there and an admission that this is going to be very, very difficult to police and enforce?
Yeah, and it's not comprehensive, right? So they're banning or they're putting an age restriction on, say, YouTube, but you can still access it through a browser. And actually, an account enables you to put controls on in a way that accessing it through a browser doesn't. So children are going to be exposed to even more risk just accessing YouTube through a browser. So, and whether they find the get-arounds, children are extremely good at finding ways around. Age restrictions alone are important. They're an important part of this strategy, but they are not the only thing. We need to work with parents. We need to make sure that we get those changes, that the regulatory changes within, and ideally that it is based on the risk risk that particular online environment poses to children. One notable absentee from this list on the Australians' legislation is Roblox. And Roblox, and Primetime did a very interesting investigation on this last week. It is, in theory, an app that is suitable for 5 and up. We want to see that risk, the risks that it poses, is really properly assessed and an appropriate age is put against that. And the same with the likes of Snapchat. What are the risks it poses to children? And I would argue it poses a lot of risks. And what is then the age appropriateness? Also, AI chatbots are not, something that's being considered here. They are also high risk. We've seen the fallout, the cases, the concerns around the risks that they pose to children. So I think we need to take a more comprehensive look at this, and we need to really put regulation in place that has teeth.
But at the core of all of this, and you have the regulation, you have the teeth, you need to have a system in place that has appropriate age verification and appropriate... What is the best solution for that? A child holding up a passport, photographs? There's huge data protection concerns there then, isn't there?
There absolutely is, and that is something we're going to need to take into account at the Irish government level. But the technology is there now. Privacy-preserving age verification is there. What I would really question, though, is whether the tech companies should own that process. I feel like, as an expert said to me, that's like the fox guarding the chicken coop. We don't want to be handing any more of our precious data to these companies. So I think it should be trusted third parties. I think they should be European-wide. I think you should have to apply to be part of this process, and that those are the solutions that these companies must use.
Alex Cooney, CEO of CyberSafe Kids, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.